Hey, welcome. Today we're taking a deep dive into a guide that makes a pretty shocking claim. It says that the government created a secret second version of you at birth, a kind of legal ghost that all your bills and court summonses are really addressed to. It's a pretty wild theory, so let's just dive right in. So the whole thing really boils down to this one kind of strange question. Think about it. What if that name you see on your driver's license, on tax bills, on court documents, the one that's always in all caps, what if that's not actually you? This theory says it's a completely separate legal entity, a sort of ghost in the machine, that was created the very day you were born. So how could that even be possible? Well, the first part of this theory really gets into this idea of a hidden legal identity. The argument is that from the moment we're born, a second version of us is created, and we have absolutely no idea it's happening.
And the key to all this, at least according to the guide, it's your birth certificate. They claim it isn't just a piece of paper that says you were born. Oh no. The theory is that it's a legal document that actually creates something called an estate. Think of it like a trust fund that's tied directly to your name.
Now, this is where it gets really, really weird. See, a decedent, well, that's a dead person. And this guide flat out argues that the all-caps name, this estate, is legally considered deceased. And that is the entity that the government, the banks, and the courts are actually dealing with, not the living, breathing you. And yeah, this slide, it breaks it down perfectly. On one hand, you've got the living person. The guy calls you the grantor because apparently your little baby footprints on the birth certificate granted this estate into existence. On the other hand, you've got the all-caps name, the decedent, which is basically treated like a puppet that's being controlled by others. That is, until you step up and claim the strings. Okay, so let's be super clear about what they mean by estate here. This isn't about what happens after you pass away in the normal sense. In this theory, it's a parallel you, a separate entity that's created at birth. And it's this entity that supposedly holds all your property, your assets, your liabilities, and it's all identified by your capitalized name on those official papers. All right, so if this abandoned estate of yours is out there and it's being controlled by other people, what's the fix? Well, the guide proposes a way to take back control, and it all revolves around something called the Executor Office. The answer, according to this document, isn't to try and fight the system head-on. No, it's about taking control from the inside. And to do that, you have to step up and claim the powerful position of executor of your own estate. You know, normally an executor is just the person who handles a will when someone passes away, right? Well, in this theory, the role is something else entirely. The guide claims that when you occupy this office, you have supreme authority. You basically become your own highest court, totally immune to the power of any lower courts. And get this, the guide has some really specific rules about who can even claim this power. It says your father is the default executor until you hit 21 or you get married. But here's the kicker. If nobody steps into that role, the guide says courts and officials act as something called an executor de sanctor, which literally means executor of his own wrong. They just start managing your estate for you because they see it as abandoned property. Okay, so how do you actually do this? How do you step into this office and start asserting all this authority? Well, the guide lays out some very specific and pretty unusual practical steps. The very first one is all about changing your legal location. And this might be the strangest part of the whole process. It's not about filing some form with a court. The guide insists the first move is to change your mailing address in a very particular way, to declare yourself non-domestic and, in their view, outside the jurisdiction of the United States. And we're not talking about any old change of address form. The guide gives this very, very specific 8-line format. Let's look at some of the key parts. General Post Office, listing your city and then your last name as a province. And then this one, United States Minor Outlying Islands. The whole theory is that using this exact format, right down to adding -9998 to your zip code, legally repositions you on the world stage, outside the reach of the domestic legal system. So once you've supposedly set up this new non-domestic address, the guide gives you your main weapon, your primary tool for dealing with courts, banks, and agencies. It's called the Executor Letter, and the whole idea is when you get a summons or a collection notice addressed to your all-caps name, you don't respond as that person. Instead, you, acting as the executor, send this letter back. You essentially treat their document as abandoned paperwork, and you demand that they prove they have any authority to interfere with your estate. And the guide gives you a playbook for this. It tells you exactly who to send this letter to. If you've got a state court case, it goes to the top, the Office of the State Court Administrator. An IRS problem, you send it straight to the IRS's Office of Chief Counsel. The whole strategy is to bypass the frontline people and go straight to the top of the administrative food chain. So, the million-dollar question, right? Does the guide claim any of this actually works? Well, the final section is just a list of successes that are supposedly thanks to these exact methods. And these aren't small claims either. We're talking about stopping foreclosures, reversing child custody decisions, and even getting criminal cases totally dismissed. One story in the guide even claims a man got out of jail just by handing over a handwritten executor letter. These stories are all presented as the proof that this theory has real power in the real world. And that kind of brings us to the heart of it all. This theory presents this hidden world, just humming along beneath the surface of our legal system, and it offers what it calls a key to ultimate authority. So the question left for us is this some brilliant discovery of a secret legal reality, or is it a really complex and maybe even dangerous misreading of the law? That's for you to think about. Thanks for tuning in.